Well, like I said earlier, I'm really excited for this whole theme, but today's sub-theme in particular, as we begin to think about who we are as a congregation and where we want to go and who we want to be as a congregation, not just in 2020, but as we look forward to an entire decade. And so as I thought more about this, I thought, well, how do we begin to sharpen our focus on Jesus' way? And, well, it seems obvious that we might want to start with Jesus' life, his teaching, and Scripture, of course, is the best place to do that. But what Scripture? And so I mulled a lot of different Scriptures over these last several weeks, and I came down to what in the end seemed like an obvious choice, right? When people came to Jesus and they said, Jesus, boil it all down, give us the Cliff Notes version, what do you want us to do? And like Pastor Jason was sharing with the kids earlier in the service, it comes down to two things. The Cliff Notes versions is easy. Love God and love your neighbor, which we know means everyone. As I started to think about it a little more, I realized that this is also a great scripture because it's in 3 of the 4 Gospels. It incorporates what even at Jesus' time was age-old wisdom and loving your God part, and then included the dynamism that worked in Jesus' present day, but also will work always in the future, which is how to love your neighbor, an ever-changing target, so to speak. So let's take a look at this scripture. I mentioned that it's in 3 of 4 Gospels. We're going to take a look at it as it is written in Matthew. And when the Pharisees heard that Jesus, had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest? Jesus said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. That's that age-old wisdom. And the second commandment is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets. So the law and the prophets, that's essentially the gathered writings and scriptures that had come into play before that. So the Cliff Notes version is these 2 things. Love God, love your neighbor, and on that everything else hangs. So it's all about love. But of course that begs the question, what is love? Well, I think love is it's that warm and cuddly feeling when we snuggle in front of the fireplace with loved ones, right? It's the willingness to sacrifice one's own ego, one's own body, one's own very self for the sake of others. It's that too, right? Love is that deep, abiding satisfaction we get when we put our own interests aside for even just a moment to serve somebody else. Love is beautiful. It's big. It's deep. It's wide. It's sometimes reckless. Sometimes it's woven right into our daily habits. Love motivates. It helps us move forward. It satisfies our soul. What more do we want than to begin and end in love? But love has its shadow side too, doesn't it? At a personal level, it can be distorted to serve our own needs. Have you ever heard something like this before? Yeah, I might sort of manipulate my partner or my child a little bit, but it's because I love them and I don't want them to get hurt. I wonder if this is sometimes code for I'm afraid they won't need me anymore. False love also plays out on a grand scale, international relations-wise. We've heard basically this argument for the last week or so. We have to go to war to kill them before they kill us. Don't you love our people more than you love theirs? Notice how that's sort of based in love? This is often the bedrock for international relations and war. It's an often used, it's a thinly veiled argument that's, when it comes right down to it, is morally weak and a lazy justification for violence that serves only ourselves. Love fallacies can also cast shadows in places like this, churches. In the church, unhealthy avoidance is often excused in the name of love. Biblical scholar Lance Pape says it this way. He says, quote, "Too often in the church, love is used as an excuse to take the path of least resistance instead of the path of excellence." I saw a couple heads nod on that one. None of these love fallacies actually follow Jesus' ethic of love. We know that. But let's take a deeper look at what that love does look like. As always, it's important to look, when we look at any scripture, especially if we take just a few verses like I did today, we need to look at that in its overall context. What happened before? What happened after? What does the overall gospel look like? So in the Gospel of Matthew, it's fascinating because this is part of Jesus' last week, his time in Jerusalem. So think about it this way. Just prior to this examination, to this answer that Jesus gave about the greatest commandments, Jesus had thumbed his nose at the political powers when he rode a donkey into Jerusalem. He had confronted the religious leaders of his own religion and vandalized the money changers' tables. He's on a religious, rhetorical smackdown tour. He's taken on every challenge from every religious scholar who dares come his way. He even pauses in the middle of all this to give a harsh warning to those who are on board with him, to tell them not to get cocky, because things could get hard. All of this was before Jesus talking about love? Jesus' love might be a little edgier than we typically think. So that's what happened before. Let's take a look at what happens after. After this, Jesus continues to trash talk the scribes and Pharisees. He predicts tough times ahead for everyone. Jesus has an edge in words and actions, even in the context of love. So we have to presume, right, that Jesus was doing all this in some sense of love. This doesn't match that picture I had in my Sunday school room growing up where Jesus is cuddling that little lamb. This is a different Jesus. This is another side to Jesus. So I'm inclined to think, if we want to sharpen our focus on Jesus' way, there needs to be an edge to what we do as well. And so here it is. My dream for E-Town Church of the Brethren, getting a little ahead of myself. My dream for E-Town Church of the Brethren in the 2020s is that we continue to sharpen our edge. And I know sometimes we can think about that. When we think sharpen our edge, our mind automatically goes to a sword or some other implement of violence. But think about it as your kitchen shears or your knife that you use every day to do the things that you need to do. Think about it as a skier. You need to have sharp edges if you want to carve the snow. We need to sharpen our edges so that we can sharpen our focus. And to do this, if we do this, we can become more and more bold in our witness, brave in our vision, loving in our hearts. And this isn't a critique in any way of where we are now. It's an encouragement to keep sharpening. And just think about how beautifully positioned we were. You know, all this reflection, looking back, looking forward. I got really excited, so much so that I got my slides out of order. Look at where we're at in terms of our congregational mission. We did this survey. We give a lot of thanks to John David Bowman who put that together for us. Our board was taking a look at this yesterday. Paula mentioned we had our board retreat. We love our mission here at Elizabethtown Church of the Brethren. The congregational survey results showed that 96% of us believe in our emphasis on peace, service, and openness, and that should continue. 85% of us are excited or hopeful about the direction of the congregation. To see another 7% are content. It's all right. and another 8% are frustrated. That's all right too. I think those 8% of you are going to help keep our edges sharp. It shows that not everybody is bought in all the time, which I appreciate, because if 100% were bought in, we'd be a cult, right? Okay, so we're on the right way. That's what a lot of people, I grew up in Arizona. When you said brethren, a lot of people would think you were a cult anyway, so. We love our mission. We love where we're going. We're also generous and mission-driven. You realize that we gave last year in 2019, we gave more than $2 million in contributions to and through this congregation? $2 million. That was to meet our operating budget, which we did and exceeded. That was giving above and beyond for special projects. It was contributing more than $1 million to our building campaign. Wow. Thank you. And wow. We're not only giving our financial gifts, we're giving our God-given gifts as well. The work that you all do, the leadership that you show, unbelievable. Knocks my socks off every week. Our paid positions are filled with excellent people as well, from front office to pastors to building managers. Our leadership is really strong here. It's unbelievable. Not only is our leadership strong, our emotional strength is also high. We continue to support and love one another through all these highs and lows of life that we all experience. When you come to a funeral here, I think most of you probably have, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And there's more. We're hardworking, we're passionate, our reputation is, well, I'll put it this way. Our reputation is what we want it to be with who we want it to be. Think about that. And last but not least, in terms of who we are as a congregation, we're beginning to risk being genuinely innovative and imaginative as we share what we have here in this congregation. I'm going to have to dig for this a little bit because I got a little out of whack. Writer Adrienne Marie Brown says, quote, "Once the imagination is unshackled, liberation is limitless." We are, after all, a people who have been liberated ourselves. And so what do we want to do but share that with others? This is not unlike Jesus having that divine imagination to hang all the law and the prophets on loving God and loving neighbor. This radical imagination has the power to change us, to help us see what is possible, and then once we see what is possible, to even change reality itself. I don't know if you believe that, but I do. And that gives me a lot of hope. So our church board met yesterday at our annual retreat, and we talked about ministry priorities. Ministry priorities that we're going to have for this year, 2020. It's clear that our board, those people who stood up, so I hope you memorized who they were, it's clear that they want to do more than just business as usual. So gleaning insight from that church, from that congregational survey, I showed just a couple of results. There's many, many more. We sent this out to the whole congregation. If you want to take a look at it, if you lost it, if you want to take a look at it, if you never saw it, let me know, and I will gladly get you a copy. It's great stuff. But gleaning insight from that, several priorities began to take shape. We want to grow closer spiritually and relationally. We want to do this through small groups. Cue Jason's announcement on small group signups. Today's the last day. But we also want to do it through special events, particularly those that are intergenerational. We recognize that that's kind of unique in our society. And it's something that we know how to do. We have fun, and we learn a lot from one another. We're looking for more robust communication both within and beyond these walls and this community. No more hiding our light under a bushel. We want to amplify our peace witness. Like Jesus in Jerusalem, we're not interested in playing it safe for propriety's sake or fear of being labeled or worried about antagonism that may come our way. We're in Jesus' way, and that's all right. And we want to grow. We want to get the building done, and we want to get it done right, but the board said, let's get on with it. Let's do it. The reason why? Because we want to spread this message of peace, service, and openness to all. Our edges are far from rusty here at E-Town COB. We're growing in so many ways, and we continue to keep sharpening these edges and honing in on this focus. Now, this is where you'll bear with me in wasn't this going to be great? I was going to talk about the Roaring 20s, then I was going to smack our logo right over the top, and you were all going to say, wow, that was really cool. Come on. Yeah, thank you, Jason. Jason works with me all the time. He knows. Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, given all this, it's great stuff, but I'm also curious to look a little further ahead. I like to look, I'm one of these people who likes to look not only a year ahead, but a decade ahead, 20 years ahead, 25 years ahead. And so I want to close today. I want to wrap up with a few thoughts about what we might be thinking about things decades long. What we might be thinking as we look ahead at our roaring 20s, if you will. How are we going to love God and neighbor as a congregation as we move forward? So this goes beyond what the board was thinking. These thoughts are just mine, so if you don't like them, don't blame the board. Here we go. First thing, if we really want to grow and excel as a congregation, we are going to need to develop a more effective system for congregational governments. Yes, I'm starting with the most boring one first. We need to have a governance system that is less bureaucratic and cumbersome. We need to have a governance system that will enable us to be more nimble and more responsive, of course, while still representing the will of the entire body and engendering trust. We need to do that. We also need to get comfortable with growth. I heard the board yesterday very comfortable with growth. We're very comfortable going out and serving in the community, building homes, serving in soup kitchens, winter shelters, even speaking prophetically about controversial issues like peace and immigration and interfaith understanding. And I think we're beginning to see the joy in inviting other people to join us in those things. For a long time, it was something that we kind of felt like, oh, I don't know about that. I don't know that others will want to do that, or that sounds a little too much like LCBC to me. We don't want to be LCBC. That's okay. They're doing their thing, and that's fine. And we do want to have strong and deep relationships with one another. But I feel like there's this little tug on our sleeves that's wondering if we have enough space for more people. If we don't, what do we do about that? Where is our growth opportunity? Is it more than one worship service a week? Is it starting another church somewhere locally, somewhere distant? Is it doubling down on our online presence? We need to figure that out. We need to get comfortable with that, and we need to figure that out because we have something special. Next, we need to practice failure. I know that seems like a silly one, but we must always be piloting new programs, new ministries, and new approaches to sharing our message so that we can share Jesus' way. And yes, that means some of these things are going to fall flat. Some of them are not going to work, and that's never fun, but some of them are going to take off. And we're going to share it with more people than we ever imagined. Now, the last one. If you were here last week and you heard what I said, I had some pretty blunt assessment about where we are as a denomination. It's no secret that the Church of the Brethren is struggling on a number of fronts. What I did not go into is that I think we are poised, that we have a unique opportunity to serve the denomination from a position of love and strength. Think about this for a minute with me. The terrain is shifting in the Church of the Brethren. Already, we have had a number of large, high-profile, and I would say extremely conservative churches, congregations, leave the denomination. Some of those have been very close to us here in Lancaster County, but it's happening in other places as well. And others are thinking about making that move as well. Now, if you think about a continuum and you think about these churches where they are, and you think about where we lie, often in comparison to them, we seem like we're pretty unorthodox, that we're pretty liberal, for lack of a better word. I've always felt like that's been a fallacy. With the departure of those congregations, essentially the spectrum, the continuum, has changed dramatically. And we're probably a lot more in the middle than you might think we are, which also positions us in a very good place to reach out to both sides. I wonder what that might look like. Okay, now couple that with the fact that we are one of the very, very few churches of the brethren that is healthy and growing. That's a painful, sad fact for a lifelong Church of the Brethren member. My home congregation struggles. Other congregations that I've been a part of along the way struggle. So, what could we do? What could we do not only as we reach out to hold and bring other folks together, but what could we do to support other congregations? It's kind of like our partner congregations that we have in Cincinnati and University Park. It's founded on this very idea that how can small churches and large churches mutually support one another? What can we learn from one another? How can we do this? So here's really the closing. We started our video ministry, and I don't know, how many people do we have going right now, Pam? We got about 20, 25 online. We started this video ministry because we wanted to share it with our partner congregation in Cincinnati, and we thought, maybe we could do something to help those who aren't able to make it to worship, thinking about our shut-ins primarily. But we didn't have a lot of faith in our shut-ins and their technological ability. Boy, were we wrong. Because they are really taking advantage of this. Originally, we thought about this as just something that would be static. We would video the service, then we would send it out later. Then we realized that we could do it live. And so we started to see that live worship was happening, that we were actually, even though we were in different locations, we were able to worship together. And so now every week we get about, Jason tells me there's 22 people watching. Welcome, 22 people. So think about that. We're all seated here with however many we are here. And then we have 22 other people in other parts of the state, of the city, of the world, joining in with us. And so we realized that maybe there's something going on. And then we started to look at other numbers, and we started to realize that what we do is right after the service is shown live, it automatically posts to YouTube. And it's there to watch anytime. And what we've seen is that the number of people who then go and watch that, and we chunk out the sermon too, in case people want to just see one part or the other, but between the sermon and the service, we get anywhere from 80, this is on average, anywhere from 80 to 150 views of those two things. Now, I know some of that is some of you all who are going to go back and say, now, what was he saying that one part? I didn't quite follow him. Part of it's that, yeah. And part of it is like, that musical piece was beautiful. I want to go back and listen to that again. But we've also discovered that there are people who are watching both live and later who have come to see this as their church community. I'm talking about people who live in California, people who live in Illinois, people who live in Indiana, people who live in Florida, people who live in Maryland. And they say to us, thank you. I feel like I'm a part of the Elizabethtown Church of the Brethren, even though I don't even live in Pennsylvania. So does that get our wheels turning a little bit more? Something that we didn't even realize. We didn't even realize the potential this kind of ministry had is now reaching to people far and wide. And I don't want to out anybody, but it's fascinating that some of the people who are watching are actually Church of the Brethren agency staff who haven't been able to find a Church of the Brethren close to them that has our edge, that comes from where we're coming from when it turns to our theological approach, our peace witness, our service, our openness. So I wonder, what would it be like if we were able to expand this ministry? To reach out to more than just disaffected Church of the Brethren around the country, to reach out to other people via this ministry, but also via other ministries. What would it be like to really get into relationships with these folks, with others, with additional people? And realizing that it's not just a one-way broadcast, that it's something that will be relational in nature, something that we will benefit from as well. Well, I know that whether you're at home or whether you're here, the clock has been ticking. And I want to wrap up for now. But I do want to close with this. I am honored to be on this journey with you, to have spent the last decade, the 2010s, and look forward to the next decade, the 2020s, our roaring 2020s. I'm honored to share this journey with you. And I'm hopeful. And I'm curious what God is going to do with us as we continue to sharpen our edges and our focus as we move forward together. Thanks for listening to some of my crazy ideas. I appreciate it.